Thank you very much. Ms. Lozano, roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Plummer,
Present.
Commissioner Mamero,
Here?
Commissioner Garcia Ariola,
Here.
Vice Chair Margolotti,
Here.
and Chair Griggs.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I would like to open public comment for items not on the agenda.
Right, Chair, I have a quick announcement to read. American Canyon promotes respectful and responsible behavior among meeting participants, whether they are present or in person or remotely. Using offensive language or remarks that promote, foster, or perpetuate discrimination based on race, creed, color, age, religion, gender, marital status, status regarding public assistance, national origin, physical or mental disability or sexual orientation, gender identification, as well as any other category protected by federal, state, or local laws will not be tolerated. In the case of this occurrence, the speaker will immediately be disconnected from the microphone. Chair, at this time we have no public comment and we did not receive any written public comment for this meeting.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lozano. Do we have any agenda changes for tonight's meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Item number 1, minutes of the Parks and Community Services Commission meeting of September 14th, 2023. Our recommendation is to approve the meeting minutes of the Parks and Community Services Commission meeting of September 14th, 2023. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the action minutes, and are there any changes or additions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve?
Sure, I'll move to approve.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much.
Chair, if we could do a quick roll call, please.
Yes, please.
Commissioner Plummer,
Aye.
Commissioner Mamero,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia Ariola,
Aye.
Vice Chair Margolotti,
Aye.
and Chair Griggs.
Aye.
Thank you.
Moving on to our regular business. We would like to welcome Honorary Youth Commissioner Elena Ray Guido. Recommendation is have the Commission welcome our new Honorary Youth Commissioner to PCS. Director Ikeda.
Thank you, Chair. So we are here, we're excited to announce that we have a youth commissioner, Alana, who's going to be joining the Parks and Community Services Commission. She's a senior at American Canyon High School. We had 6 applicants that applied to become youth commissioners on all 3 commissions here with the city. 1 for Planning Commission, 1 for the Parks and Community Services Commission, and then 1 for the Open Space, Active Transportation, and Sustainability Commission. On October 3rd, the City Council swore all 3 of those youth commissioners in, and they are now going to be serving on these bodies in an honorary role, and hopefully to gain some experience before they head off and become great, amazing young adults in our community. Alana could not be here this evening. Her first meeting will be in November. Skipping a month. November, she had her senior night tonight with tennis. So we wish her good luck. We hope that she won her match, and we'll officially meet her at the next commission meeting.
Very exciting. Thank you very much. Just as a reminder to our commission, we are usually very time conscientious at our meetings, but since we're going to have a high schooler, honorary commissioner, youth commissioner joining our group, we'll just try and keep our meetings to the 90-minute goal to not keep her up past when she would need to get her full 8 hours of sleep.
Can I ask something quickly just on that? I know in the past it hasn't been limited to just seniors. I'm wondering if in the future juniors could be considered. Otherwise, it kind of skips their college application experience that they could add. So I'm wondering if that could be a possibility to consider for the future.
Yeah, I can bring that back to the city manager. Right now, the way that the Youth Commission is designed is for seniors in high school. They would come on to this commission, and then they would end in June once they graduate. Out of the 6 applicants, we did receive, I believe there were 3 seniors and 3 juniors that applied. I'm sure that if we didn't get the senior the senior applications that we were looking for, that we would have opened it up to a junior. But I can absolutely bring that recommendation back for future consideration.
I think that's a great suggestion. Perhaps it's even a 2-year appointment. Any other commissioner comments or questions regarding this business item? Okay, moving on to business item number 3, Parks and Facility Naming Policy. Recommendation, review and discuss the proposed changes to the city's Parks and Facility Naming Opportunity Policy. Director Akita?
Thank you, Chair. So we are going to be continuing this conversation. As you recall, we met back in August of 2023 to discuss the updating the policy for renaming city parks and facilities. This is part of this commission's work plan for fiscal year 23-24 that was approved and adopted by City Council on June 20th. In addition to that, almost kind of at the same time, City Council had expressed an interest that we obtain the City of American Canyon's history from 1992 on. So that will be, it'll be 2 separate projects, but it will eventually align. We're hoping to have that history project completed before we actually solicit feedback to rename Napa Junction Elementary School, which is now unofficially called our Napa Junction Community Center, which the city obtained in September of 2022, and then Community Park 1 and Community Park 2. So tonight before you, we have the original policy in its current state, and that is going to be on pages 8 through 10, and then 8 through 11, excuse me. And then on page 12 of your packet is the recommended changes to the policy. Just to give you some context and some feedback. At our last meeting, what I had heard is that we wanted to change the Technical Advisory Committee to be this body, and that was based off of what we felt, the feedback that we received from council is that this body would do the public engagement process for the renaming of those 3 facilities. And when we read this policy, it had a very different Technical Advisory Committee. It had 1 Parks and Community Services Commissioner, 1 council member, 1 adult member at large, and 1 youth member at large. As you recall, since that policy was drafted, we had not ever used it in its current state. And so we really wanted to make sure that there is a public engagement process, and that that process included this body for all members of this body to participate in. And then also adding a timeline to the application and renaming process. I know it was very vague and it was very broad in its current status. And then when I started to do some additional research and looking at additional facility naming policies with other Parks and Recreation departments, at not only a local scope, but actually nationally. So I looked at several policies throughout the entire United States and tried to see what they were doing, and took a lot of language and feedback from them and tried to incorporate it into our policy, because I really felt like there was a lot missing. The policy in its current state didn't have a lot of didn't have a criteria. So it had the process, and a very vague process, but it didn't have a criteria and how that name would qualify to be considered to name a facility after. So getting into the policy on page 12, where you're going to see a lot of track changes, and that's all in red. I wanted to incorporate an introduction. I felt that was important to explain the policy, the purpose of the policy. Then you get into the naming criteria, which has 10 different options. When we're naming a facility, it doesn't have to be all 10 of those options. It could be any one of those options. And then we get into the procedures. That's where you're going to find the changes to the policy in regards to the procedures, where this body is going to serve as the technical advisory committee, what that process looks like. We have an application process. It would be open for 30 days. That would be where we would solicit feedback from the community for the facilities. And then the public engagement process would be this body. And then the whole naming process could take anywhere between 4 to 6 months, depending on the context and the public engagement that you receive here in this commission as well as city council. And then this body would make a recommendation to city council, and then city council would ultimately have the final authority for that name. It's important to note that in this policy, I did add a blurb to make it very clear of what is considered a city facility, and that is going to be on page 15. You're going to have a series of definitions, and so you have a city facility is broadly defined as a park, parkland, trails, open space, facilities, monuments, landmarks, or parking lots. Open space is defined. Trails, I did receive some feedback. When we go to council, that's going to be trails that are class 1. Trails, we're not going to be naming class 2, 3, or 4 because those are actually along roadways on streets. So class 1 trails are like the pathways in between parks or along a street. It's separate from the street, like the Vine Trail, the Ridge Trail, the River to Ridge Trail, like things like that. So then you have your facilities, and then you have the multiple categories in which somebody can name a facility. So you have your diversity inclusion category, you have your functional category, you have your honorary memorial category, your regional category, and then your donation or sponsorship category. So that is an overview of my recommendation for the change to this policy, and I would appreciate your feedback this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Akita. Does anyone have any, well, I think we should all say something. I'll just start. I like everyone to participate. I just have something right off the top that that I am a little bit concerned about. I'm concerned about the absolutes in 1 and 2. All names shall reflect diversity, equity, and inclusion and represent everyone in the American Canyon community. I don't think that's realistic. I'm also concerned that if we say all names, we're going to get a lot of people wanting to rename everything, which isn't necessary. And I don't think that we're going to come up with a name that's going to represent everyone, because we do have a very diverse community. But perhaps better wording is representative of the American Canyon community. And we can just take out all. It just doesn't have to be there in 1 and 2.
Can I make a quick comment on that as well, too? I agree with you, Chair Griggs. Instead of removing all, keeping all or not keeping all, should we say prioritize names that reflect that rather than specifying? Again, it's a prioritization rather than an absolute, to your point, right? When you can't prioritize that, then the alternative would be something else. So maybe there's language that can say prioritizing inclusion, diversity, blah, blah, blah. Alternatively, blah, blah, oops, blah, 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 blah. Something of that matter? Does that make sense?
Can I actually make a recommendation, because I'm actually realizing that I forgot to include what I said in my update, of my broad update. I think what's missing from the original naming criteria, I said, in selecting the name for the city facility, the following criteria shall be used. Please note the criteria is not listed in any particular order. And I think what I think would help in this matter would be the name doesn't have to qualify under all of these 10 items. And I think that way it gives you more flexibility to be able to, like, oh, the whole point of it is you're choosing, oh, this is going to hit diversity. This is going to hit functional. This is going to hit sponsorship and donation. So I think that will help it just a little bit. And so that way it doesn't make it like your name has to fit all 10 of these items, because that wasn't the intent. So maybe I think I need to clean that up, and I think that might help. Do you agree?
I think that would be great, but I also think you might want to remove the word all. And prioritize, I think, is good. Or names
Shall reflect.
shall reflect.
Names shall reflect.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that feedback.
On that same line, on number 6, it says, no park shall be given the same name as an existing school site or public facility except where the site abuts one another. I think we could just take that whole thing out. Because if it abuts, then it can have the same name, and if not, then not.
What number is that, Chair? I'm sorry.
That is number 6
Thank
on
you.
page 12.
So you want to take out except when it butts one another?
I'm just not sure if that whole sentence, second sentence, is necessary.
So the way that it's written is an adjoining subdivision, street, school, or natural feature. No park shall be given the same name as an existing school site or public facility, except when it abuts one another.
Yeah, I think that would be the only time that anybody would think about naming it the same name. So I mean, if we need to say it, then we need to say it, but it feels like,
If we don't
it
say
feels like if it's adjoining, then it can have the same name. If it's not adjoining, it wouldn't, right? Maybe just simplification of the language.
Okay.
Chair Griggs, are you, for 6, just clarification, are you trying to clean up the redundancy of how it's worded? Recommendation might be, unless it's an adjoining subdivision, street, school, or natural facility, comma, no park shall be given the same name as existing school, blah, blah, blah. And then just take out that except part. So I think there's one way to just make that one sentence. Is that what you were kind of leading towards?
Perfect.
Director Ikeda, if I might, without reading every single line
Yeah.
word by word, it might take us a while. Question regarding the TAC committee. I know that we agreed as a unit here to eliminate that, or find a way to eliminate that so that this body essentially acts as the TAC. I noticed that there's a verbiage in here that talks about that. Is there a definition of TAC also being included in this, or is that something that's found elsewhere? Just as a point of clarification for anybody that's reading this document.
Yeah, so on page 14, bullet number 3, it says the Parks and Community Services Commission will serve as the technical advisory committee. So that's where it's stated, right there, in the actual process itself, but it's not in the definition part. Do
Yeah,
you
I
foresee
think
that do you foresee that that needs to be defined further?
I don't know if it needs to be defined further in this document, but maybe like it needs to be referenced to say what is a TAC, right? Because we know what it is, and maybe, and again, I haven't read this line by line, so forgive me if it's in here. But I guess my question is, should we reference the definition of what a TAC committee is to another document, or is it referenced in here somewhere else?
I don't think that's necessary because when you read further down in the process, it starts to get into the meat of that process, right? So we're going to have an application process where That's going to be open for 30 days. Once it's concluded, the Parks and Recreation Department will review all submitted applications. Qualified applications will be given to the TAC, and since the TAC is already referenced right above it, then we get into city staff will prepare a staff report for the TAC that should include the following. Then it's going to have that outlined, and then the TAC will review and discuss the qualified applications at a regularly scheduled Parks and Community Services Commission meeting. This will be an agendized item and will be subject to public comment. The TAC is encouraged to engage with the community and listen to their feedback during the PCS meeting and make a final recommendation to City Council. I think that might be an answer to your question because it clearly defines the role and who the TAC is.
Okay, thank you. No, I appreciate that. And then a follow-up question to that is, at some point, will the TAC be just eliminated, whereas the Parks and Community Service Commission actually just, it's part of their body of work as naturally it is, rather than referencing a TAC, talking about the process, it's just the PCS actually does this.
Correct, and I think that's what we're trying to do, right? When this policy was originally drafted, it was supposed to have a completely separate technical advisory committee. It was only supposed to be one member of PCS, and this, now we're rewriting the policy to make PCS the technical advisory committee. So anytime anybody suggests a facility name change, that it would come to this body and then it would be discussed to engage with the public, to have that public feedback. And then this body would discuss it and then it would make a recommendation to council. So we're really trying to change, make this body that technical advisory committee moving forward.
Thank you.
Director, on page 14, item number 1, any American Canyon resident, business owner, or organization may submit a request to name. Do we need to include or rename? Because that's what we're currently doing with the parks, right?
You know, I played around with that a little bit. Really, I think name is pretty broad in my perspective. Like Community Park 1, yes, I know we're renaming it, but we're actually really naming it. I think it's kind of name, rename. Unless we want to get that technical, we can actually absolutely add that language to say name or rename a city facility.
You could just put a little parentheses, RE, right?
Yeah,
Name,
we can do
rename.
that. Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at page 13, bullet point number 9. It says donation of land or resource shall not constitute an obligation by the city to make the land or facility or any of the portion. Therefore, after an individual or family's city-owned land, park, or facility shall not be named for the benefactor, organization, groups, or business, but not in special cases may be considered for sub-facilities such as rooms or playgrounds. I think it should constitute the naming of that person at least, or something that in particular. From my experience with like the county of San Mateo, they have this park, Sam McDonald's. He donated like acres and acres of land. And on there, it just shows the history of this generous man, and it really constitutes like what is community and why it's important to them, and just learning of their perspective and their how they view things. I think it's very important to recognize those individuals. And it would also contribute to people willing to donate that land. Because someone who's donating, land, something they've worked hard their whole life, I think it's important to recognize them.
Absolutely correct, and I think what you're seeing is consideration may be given. So it's not an absolute. It gives the flexibility to the council to, if we do receive a piece of property that, let's just say that property owner has a name on that property and the city doesn't want that name, they have the ability to rename it. So again, it leaves that flexibility. But yes, that's why I really wanted to add that in here, because there are times like the Newell Open Space Preserve. That was a gift from the Newell family. The city decided to keep that name. But let's just say it was the hamburger property. And maybe that didn't fit with what the council wanted. So that gives the flexibility for us to be able to have that property be a part of this process. So.
Yeah, but I still think that would contribute to, you know, like the history of American Canyon, like you said, it's a hamburger place or whatnot, or the burger place. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, for example, like certain areas here, like we know that the ruins doesn't have a name, but everyone knows it as the ruins, and it just kind of adds to the culture of American Canyon.
No, I'm hearing you. I'm agreeing with you. What I think I'm not making clear is it's in here to your point, but it gives the council consideration. It's not an absolute. So when somebody comes in here and says, I want it to be Newell because the Newell family gave it to us, that could be a consideration because it was a gift or a donation.
Right.
So
No.
this is actually worded the way that you want it to be worded. It just is not an absolute, like it's not finalized. It gives the city the ability to have some flexibility with that.
Right, I know, and that's why we're making recommendations here, so thank you, Director.
Mm-hmm.
Director Akita, we could change consideration maybe to consideration will be, because consideration will be given. And then it also says shall not constitute an obligation. So it gives both sides flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay, and just want to make sure you're done.
Oh, I'm just taking all of my notes.
So, yes, Director Akita, so a process question. The city facility naming application itself, will that be available in different languages, kind of as our standard operating procedure?
Yeah, that's the plan. So this is just kind of a draft. This is more operational. We haven't really fleshed that out. This was just more to give you an idea of what it would look like, what I'm proposing. And again, this is going to come down to operations and how we feel that we're going to be able to best serve this community. Right now, with our electronic forms, we do have it through Laserfish, and we are making great strides to try to put things in both English, Spanish, and Tagalog.
Okay.
For this community. So that is the plan to make it multilingual.
Okay, no, that's good. I just wanted to make sure that's already like baked into the application so that our non-English speakers have an opportunity to be engaged in the naming process.
Absolutely.
And yes, English, Spanish, Tagalog, I think that pretty much covers it.
Director, on page 12, item number 2, the last line of purpose, all facility names should reflect everyone in the community and intentionally broaden representation. Maybe consider all facility names will be representative of the American Canyon community and intentionally broaden representation. Because again, I'm concerned that one name is not going to necessarily reflect every person in the community.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Regarding sponsorships, could you give an example of where a sponsor would have naming opportunities? Just so the public understands what that looks like?
Yeah, so the Newell property, I think, is the best example right now that I can give that's actually solidified, that actually has happened in this community. The Newell property was a property that was donated to the city in 1998, and that it came with a conservation easement on it, and it's named the Newell Open Space Preserve, and that was an actual donation from a family in this community. And so, if the city, for instance, decided that that name did not fit with what they wanted it to be, the city could change that name, even though it's donated. In this case, they did not. They felt it was appropriate. They felt it was a tie to American Canyon, and they kept the name that came with that property.
Yeah, thank you. No, I understand the donation part. I guess I'm curious about.
Oh, I'm sorry, the
item eight,
sponsorship.
Sponsorships, correct.
Yeah, so sponsorship could be like somebody who sponsors like a project. I had a gentleman come to me a while ago that wanted to sponsor a playground. They sometimes will give X amount of dollars towards a playground, and if they have terms and conditions tied to that, that would be considered under this policy of what that would look like, and if that would fit with what the city wanted. And so that's where I think number 9 under the. So I really wanted to make sure that number 10 is in there, because there may be an opportunity where a sponsorship comes in. We do have a lot of projects, and we do have a lot of partners in this community, and we want to recognize their importance to that. It's page 13, number 10. It's that very long paragraph.
Oh, sorry, is that number 9 on?
We don't
on our
have a
sheet?
10.
It's supposed to have a 10.
Okay.
It's supposed to have a 10. It has a dash next to it. It says an individual living or deceased or organization that contributes significantly to the acquisition or development. The same paragraph that
Oh, I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
Garcia
Okay, got it.
Ariola was referring to. That's where, like if somebody were to come in and want to sponsor a project and, give some sort of contribution to support that project, and they say that, well, I want it to be called the Alexandra E. Ketta Playground, we would follow that process of the naming process, and we would discuss that and figure out if that would be the best name. But that can happen. That can happen where we have lots of partners here that like to do amazing things for this community and partner with the city. We recently did a partnership with ACCPF with the 3 playground replacement projects. And so that's another example of sponsorship.
Okay, that's helpful to understand. And a follow-up question to that, if you don't mind. Is there a duration of which the naming of the sponsorship is for? Is it a contractual thing? I assume it's going to vary based on maybe donation amount, but is there a time duration that we're looking at for these, or this is in perpetuity?
The names are intended to be in perpetuity. When we name something, it's going to be that permanent name. Like when we name Napa Junction, that's going to be the new name. Same with Community Park and Community Park.
Sorry,
One.
I meant specifically for sponsorships.
So pertaining to the name or to the, maybe you can elaborate on your question then.
So if I'm a sponsor of the Little League Ballpark and I want to call it Charlie's Ballpark for a duration of time, is there a timeline by which my donation is good for? And then the naming rights, it's kind of like naming rights, I guess, is a question. And it's not used in such a language, but in the business I operate in, sponsorships have a naming rights and a duration. I'm just trying to equate if that's similar or not.
Yeah, no, we don't have that built into this policy. Once we name a facility, it's going to be in perpetuity. So that's the purpose of that, because I think it would just get really confusing for the city or for the community if we had a facility that we constantly renamed. It would get very confusing for us. So I think the point that we're trying to make is have permanent names.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Well, and I think it says basically that that's not going to happen for parks or facilities, because it says city-owned lands, parks, or facilities shall not be named for benefactor organizations, groups, or businesses, but in special cases may be considered for sub-facilities such as rooms or playgrounds. So it's not going to be able to sponsor a park, right? And
we
have it
can-
named after you.
Right, and so that language we can discuss that if you want to discuss it further, because we do have several facilities that are named after prominent figures or figures in this community that are tied, like the Philip West Aquatic Center. That's actually named after a person. The Newell Open Space Preserve is named after a person, or a family, I should say. So if we wanted to talk about that, we can talk about that too, if we wanted to clean up that language.
What is, can I ask, what is the goal of that language? What are we trying to accomplish?
That is a great question. When I wrote it in here, it was to, I'm going to backpedal. I don't think that would be a good statement. I don't think council would appreciate that. I don't think that that fits with what we're currently doing as a city. So I'm recommending that we strike it out because we have proven that we do name things after people in this community. We have Lemos Point, we have Newell, we have Philip West Aquatic Center. So I think that's going to be my recommendation to strike that out. I don't think that's consistent what we've been doing as a city.
So we'll strike out the last sentence of item number 10.
Yes,
It
correct.
starts with city-owned lands.
Yes. And then I also wanted to bring up, because this was something that I also wanted to discuss at this forum and kind of get your feedback on. Number two, so when we start getting into the name qualifications, criteria, number two says all names shall focus on local American Canyon significance, but names that reflect California or natural lens may be approved if applicable to American Canyon by direct or broad association. This one is kind of interesting because what we're proposing here is that we would always consider an American Canyon name first before like a Martin Luther King Street or, Martin Luther King Park. It's a different concept, and I just don't know if that's something that we wanted to highlight and have it be tied directly back to American Canyon, or have a broader perspective of having that flexibility to have a George Washington Park or Martin Luther King Park, or some other prominent figure that's recognized nationally over and versus only considering American Canyon names first. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I read that as kind of prioritizing American Canyon names, but not necessarily excluding California, Napa County, or national names of significance. I mean, if anything, if I kind of just to clean it up, the last clause, if applicable to American Canyon by direct or broad association.
Because that's actually, that's like an absolute, like it could be considered if there's a connection to the community, right? And so I think.
Yeah, but that also, then that makes it fit under the first clause. It's hard to put that into words. But I mean, if a hypothetical, right? We want to name a park. The first woman in space just kind of comes to mind, right? Sally
Yeah.
Ride. Or first American woman in space, sorry. We want to name it after Sally Ride, and she has no connection to American Canyon that we know of. I guess we could if we happen to be kind of space-oriented, if the commission is like kind of space-oriented at the time.
But right now, we're not. So that would actually, like, with the way that it's currently written, if applicable to American Canyon by direct or broad association. So if we got rid of that last part, that would actually add more flexibility and allow us to grow as a city.
Correct,
So I think we need to delete that last part.
right.
Okay.
So it could just read, names shall first focus on local American Canyon significance, but names that reflect California or a national lens,
May be approved.
Maybe approved.
Period.
Just leaves it,
or will be considered.
yeah, just leaves it open-ended. Otherwise, the non-American Canyon, the proposed non-American Canyon name will still need an will still require an American Canyon connection.
Yes.
Well, we do have a park that's not just specific to American Canyon. We have Veterans Park, and we have the 9/11 Memorial
Yeah.
at the firehouse.
Right,
So we
right.
already have those things.
Well, exactly, and it's arguable that, you know, we're naming that kind of in deference to our American Canyon veterans, but, you know, why tie us to that? Right? Yeah.
For number 4, I'm not sure if we need the IE examples of neighborhoods, significant areas, et cetera. It seems a little vague. I think geographic location is specific enough.
Okay.
And I'd like to make one comment about number 3. Thank you for adding flora and fauna in there. I think that's appropriate since those are typically native to a specific area too, so nice work on that.
Thank you.
Director, I just want to make sure on page 13 under procedures,
Yes.
it says input from American Canyon residents and holding public meetings with the Parks and Community Services Commission and City Council. Is this intended to be a special additional meeting with PCS and council? Because if it's not, perhaps we need to reword that.
It is not intended to be a joint meeting. It's the intention of that sentence is to show the progression of the public meeting process. That first it would go to Parks and Community Services and then it would go to City Council.
Can we put a then after Parks and Community Services Commission and then City Council?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, and there's a grammatical error that I saw.
There's probably lots of those in there. That's why, yeah.
Under number 10, sorry, the last sentence before the one that we struck.
Uh-huh.
An obligation by the city to, I think that's supposed to be name the land or facility instead of make.
An obligation by the city to make the land. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
An obligation by the city to make the land or facility or any portion thereof after an individual. I think it should be to name.
Yes.
Give everyone a couple more minutes to think of any other comments, feedback, or recommendations. Going back to Commissioner Plummer's comment about sponsorship, there's a definition of sponsorships on page 15, but I don't see anywhere in the policy where sponsorship is stated.
So when you start looking at the application, there's going to be the, on page 20, this is kind of like a draft application. Before there was three criterias, like name, like, and when we talk about criterias, it's gonna, like, so when somebody fills an application, they're gonna be able to check one of those three boxes with the current application and what that name falls under. We have expanded that to 5. Which is going to include donation or sponsorship, and that's where if there was some sort of sponsorship tied to that name, then the individual who's submitting the application would check that box, and then they would have to justify why they would want to name that facility after that sponsorship. When it comes to the policy itself, to your point, other than the definition, sponsorships are not mentioned. So we could probably add, we have number 10 that we all identified as being a donation, but maybe we need to add some language around sponsorships. And maybe what we do is, instead of it just being donations, maybe do donation/sponsorship and make it more broad that way.
Great. Thank you very much. Director, were there any specific questions you had for us, or any particular areas that you wanted us to pay attention to with regards to the policy or the application?
I did want to, I forgot to add during my update that this policy, I did put in the introduction, it is the last sentence of the first paragraph. It says, this policy does not cover the naming of new streets that are being considered within the development of a new subdivision. This occurs through the city's planning process and ensures the engineering and public safety criteria are met. I really wanted to call that out because this really is the naming of a city facility, not streets. Or sometimes subdevelopments already come with names. For example, Watson Ranch, Lemos Point, the Cove. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was in this policy as well, and that was highlighted. But really, there was a lot of changes and recommendations in here, and I wanted to make sure that this body felt comfortable with that, because part of the commission is you are an advisory commission pertaining to policy for city council. So we bring the policy updates to this body, we talk about it, you provide your feedback, your recommendations, and then in turn we take that and we present it to council with a final recommendation. And so I really, since there are quite a few changes to this policy, I wanted to make sure that this body felt comfortable with that and what we're trying to do here to try to clean this up and make it more modern.
Thank you very much for all of your work on that, and the staff, I'm sure, that were involved in assisting you. We greatly appreciate it. Policy making is not an easy or a simple task.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments or questions on this business item?
Yeah, I got one. So on the city facility naming application, I'm putting myself in the shoes of somebody who's filling this out. Paragraphs 4 and 5. 4 is explain justification for the name, and 5 is explain reason for the nomination. I guess, what's the nuance between those two?
That is a great question, Commissioner Mammarell. You know, I'm actually thinking the same thing right here as I'm rereading it. And I think maybe number 4 or number 5 would justify, but we don't need both.
I agree. I mean, I'm really, I see this and I'm thinking, at one of our earlier meetings, Fran gave a suggestion, you know, one of her friends who passed away, and I'm just thinking, how would Fran fill this out? And I mean, she just might say, oh, I forgot the lady's name, Dottie, but like Dottie is awesome, you know, or Dottie did all this stuff. But I just, yeah, I think 4 or 5 could be, either 4 or 5 could be eliminated. 5 is ultimately, well, in my opinion, the easiest to understand. So if I had my druthers, 4 would be out.
Thank you for your feedback. And thank you for the clarification and correction.
And would this be like a fillable PDF?
That's the idea, is to make it
Because
electronic.
it'd be really hard to handwrite all you want to say
Yeah,
on 3
and this
tiny
is just a
lines.
draft.
Okay.
I honestly, like, I haven't even fleshed this piece out. It's just more of kind of just to give you the idea of what we would be asking for. Because when you look at the original application, there's not a lot there. And I think if we're really going to treat this as a recommendation that comes to this body, where we're going to be looking at the qualifications and the justification of why that nomination is coming forward, you're going to want to have that information for it to be part of the consideration process. And the way that the application currently stands now does not provide that to this body. So it really is just a recommendation, and there's no context to that recommendation. And so trying to get the individual who's making that nomination to provide the context as to why they feel that facility should be named that, I think is going to be really beneficial to this body when you're making that decision.
I have a quick question. As I'm reading through the old application, it also mentioned monuments. And again, forgive me, I didn't read word for word on the revisions. Is that also stated in there, monuments or statues or placards? Is that language that's being used in the current update?
It's just, it is being in the definition of what it's defined, of what is considered a monument. And when we talk about like the broad classification of a city facility, that's in there because we're not just naming parks. We're going to be naming a multitude of things, excuse me. The intention is to make that statement, city facility, very broad of anything that this policy would cover. And right now it has parks, parklands, trails, which is going to be more specifically classified to Class 1 trails, open spaces, facilities, monuments, landmarks, and parking lots.
Thank you.
Director, did you have any other questions or areas you wanted us to focus on to provide you feedback on this evening regarding
No.
this policy change?
So I think next steps, if you guys are done with your questions for right now, we can open up for public comment, and then hopefully we can button it up and then move on to the next item.
Okay, if there are no other commissioner comments or questions at this time, we'll go ahead and open this item for public comment.
Chair, we currently have no public comment.
Okay, hearing no public comment, we will move on to our management and staff reports. Parks and Recreation Department update. Director?
Thank you, Chair. So I am here this evening to provide an update to this body. I did the same update to council last week about all the amazing things that have been happening within the Parks and Recreation Department. So within this presentation, we're going to go over our program registration, our parks and facility rentals, our community volunteer opportunities, our community nonprofit organization and partners, community sports organizations, projects, and then looking forward. This snapshot is from January of this year to September of this year. You're going to see some comparisons between 2022 and 2023. 2022 is going to include from March of 2022 to December of 2022. And if you recall, that was from January to March, we were still semi-shut down because of the pandemic, and we were trying to reopen our facilities and bring back a lot of our beloved programs and services. But you're going to be able to see the significant push that the department made to get up and running for summer programming and to be able to expand their services to where we are today. So Parks and Recreation, we do it all. We are committed to enhancing our community's quality of life. We play a significant role in shaping our city's character and a sense of place. We strive to meet the needs of our diverse and multicultural community by offering a wide variety of recreation programs, services, parks, trails, and open spaces. We continue to be an essential function of the city by promoting physical, emotional, and mental health, by encouraging physical fitness, outdoor play. We foster social cohesiveness. We celebrate diversity and promoting social equity. We create memorable experiences through our community events and partnerships. We sustain and steward natural resources by protecting sensitive habitats and species within our open spaces. And we support economic vitality by partnering and supporting our local partners and nonprofit organizations. Our department is currently staffed by 1 Parks and Recreation Director, 1 interim recreation manager, 4 full-time recreation coordinators that oversee various divisions, and we have 1 full-time administrative clerk and 1 full-time clerk 1, and then various part-time staff that directly support programming. So as you can see from 2022 to 2023, just within actually less than a year, we were able to increase our Civic Rec users by up to 8,574 from 5,473. Of those 8,500, 4,600 of them are American Canyon residents. In 2023, we had a total of 14,570 transactions processed through Civic Rec, either online, over the phone, or in person. Majority of our registration happens online. Our registration software is very user-friendly. It's very intuitive. We do offer in-person services over the phone. We have staff that are bilingual in both Spanish and Tagalog, as well as English, that are able to assist anybody that may need translation. So moving down into our programs, you can see based off of the various programs, just the growth of what we've done within that period of time. I would just like to highlight, because I think it's a really big accomplishment for our department. In 2022, we offered 1,200 swim lesson opportunities, and in 2023, we increased that up to 1,900. That is a huge organizational change that we made at our aquatic facility. We went from having 1 program operate at a time to multiple programs, and really sharing that space and maximizing. The pool is 6 lanes. It goes from 3 feet all the way up to 6 feet. It doesn't create a lot of opportunity for smaller level classes, but we got creative and we were able to expand that and really just work with our program participants to be able to expand our aquatics programming to everyone in AC. We increased our youth enrichment programs, as you can see for those numbers. We have brought back adult sports. We've increased those. Our youth sports are a little bit down because we haven't quite completed the year. In this report, which you're not going to see today, is our fall basketball program that's currently going on right now. Once we complete the year, that number will increase because we are offering more fall sports. Parks and facility rentals. So whether you're planning a birthday party, family reunion, corporate event, or any other special gathering, our well-maintained parks and facilities continue to be a popular amenity in our community. We offer several group picnic reservation areas throughout the city that are on a first-come, first-served basis, but if you want to actually reserve a picnic location, you have to be an American Canyon resident, and that is because the demand is so high. In September 2022, the city acquired the former Napa Junction Elementary School, now is referred to as our Napa Junction Community Center, which we are very excited about. We also have our Adult Activity Center and our recreation building for indoor facility rentals. Community partnerships and community volunteer opportunities. So we recognize the importance of our volunteers and how they help make our community a better place to live, work, and play. We offer a wide variety of volunteer opportunities throughout the year, focusing our efforts on our parks, events, and programs. Just this year, we worked alongside 186 volunteers, equating to 837 volunteer hours. Some of the volunteer events include Earth Day, Ridge Trail Day, and Goat Head Removal Day. And then most recently, we have the Coastal Cleanup Day. Our community nonprofits and organizations, they foster civic engagement and leadership and provide educational, recreational, cultural, and social services that are needed and valued by our community. Our department works with 21 different nonprofit organizations where we directly support them in some shape or form by either providing staff resources, supplies, facilities at no cost for their community-based events or program services or events. Just this year, as you can see, we had over 205 rentals. We had 35 community-sponsored events that were put on by the nonprofits where city staff in some shape or form were supporting that. 145 city staff hours were allocated to those events. And then we also serve the Boys and Girls Club where we provide free recreation swim during the summertime. Sports organizations play a significant role within our department and community. Although we provide a wide variety of high-quality sports programs, we work closely with several community sports organizations that provide an advanced competitive sports experience. The city values these partnerships as they promote high-quality sports leagues within our community, teach sportsmanship and teamwork, and they help form meaningful relationships and community bonds. Our support and involvement with these organizations are minimal. However, city resources are allocated to support them. The rental hours that you see on the screen are rental hours that we give to these organizations at no cost. And as you can see, that has grown and expanded over time. And each of those groups, like I said, they use a city facility for their practices and their games, and they are not charged for that rental time. Projects. We have a lot of projects going on, and some of these I'm really proud to say that we either have completed or they are in the works. So the playground replacement project you should all be familiar with. That is our trifecta playground replacement, which included Via Bellagio Park, which is our bug park, Northampton Park, which is our now new all-inclusive universal play experience. And then we also have Linwood Park, which the fence is going up tomorrow at that park. So we're actually gonna start that renovation within the next week. Skateboard park relocation project, that one is gonna be located at Veterans Park. The fence is up. That project is breaking ground, and it is expected to be completed in December. Wetlands Edge Enhancement Project. That is the project down at the Wetlands Preserve. That is our outdoor education space with a permanent restroom. In addition, coming November, we will be installing a native pollinator garden. This is going to be part of our Citizens Academy capstone volunteer project. And that's going to be taking place on November 18th. Melvin Tennis Courts, we're currently soliciting proposals to get those resurfaced. We are aware they are in very poor condition, and we have slated those to be resurfaced this coming spring. Northampton Shade Canopy, Northampton Park Restroom, and Silver Oak Restroom, those are all in the works as well. Those are a little bit more technical because we have to find the utility lines and where we're going to place those park restrooms and the canopy for that project. Community Park 1 improvements. We recently just met with the Little League this week, and we are in the works of talking with them and engaging them on incorporating a larger project and including Community Park 1 turf improvements and using Little League as our partner to help complete that project. We're hoping to have that project completed by spring, right before their season begins. This is going to be in partnership with the football organization, so we're going to have to coordinate with them before we actually start that project. Via Bellagio Playground Surface, that is going to council on the 17th as a consent item to award a contract to Miracle Play Systems. They're the same company that is currently working with us with all the other playground replacement projects. And then the adult activity floor upgrade, that is going to be happening over the holiday season in December when we are shut down. So looking forward, what are we doing? In 2023, we had a huge recruitment effort. We went from a staff, I would say probably about 12 up to 80, and that was to support all of our summer programs and services, our summer camp, our swim lessons, our basketball camps. We plan to bring a lot of those staff back. I will tell you that it is a testament to our team, and when it's the best compliment when you have returning staff that want to come back and work, and a lot of them have already committed to next year, so we're really excited about that, and we'll start those recruitment efforts coming November. We do start early because we want to get them on board in May, so that way we can get them trained and ready to go to start programming in June. Volunteer opportunities. We have 2 volunteer opportunities coming up. We have Ridge Trail Day, which is going to be on November 4th, and we have Veterans Day ceremony. Those opportunities are available online, and people are more than welcome to sign up and participate. And then community events. We have our Pool Pumpkin Patch and Splash. It's coming up on October 21st. We have the Veterans Day ceremony located at the middle school gymnasium. We have our Magic of the Season, which is going to be on December 1st, and that is going to be at Shenandoah Park from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. It is on a Friday evening, and this is in partnership with the American Canyon Chamber of Commerce. Please come out and support. It's going to be a beautiful evening filled with a marketplace from our local businesses and nonprofit organizations, as well as a tree lighting at 6:30 and community performances. And then we also have our Donuts with Santa on December 16th. And that is us in a snapshot from January to September. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. You and your staff have been very busy this year. Wonderful accomplishments, and still more things to come before the end of the year. Okay, do we have any commissioner comments or questions at this time regarding the staff report? Okay. Anything further, Director?
Not on this item. Thank you.
That is our last item, correct?
I do have a couple other updates if you think it would be appropriate for me to give them right now.
I think that would be wonderful. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you. So I want to give you an update on the master plan. As part of your work plan for this year, we had slated to get a proposal to update the Parks and Community Services master plan. That has not been updated since 2011. We met with RRM, which is a consultant. They're one of the original bodies who provided a scope of services for the general plan and as part of that process. So we met with them, and we are going to be submitting what we would like to see in the master plan, and they're going to hopefully get us a proposal by January, so then we can go to council with a line item to update that master plan. The history project, which is tied to the facility naming policy, city staff is currently working with the high school students at American Canyon High School. This is going to be a volunteer opportunity for them. We will be meeting, we have our second meeting scheduled for next Wednesday after school, and this meeting is to talk about the scope of the project, develop questions, and talk about interview times. We do have about 8 to 10 individuals that we've identified in this community that we would like to be a part of this project, and we're hoping to have that completed by the new year as well. We already talked about Linwood, we talked about Skateboard Park, and that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any other items, comments, questions? Anybody want to say a cheer? Okay, then I'm going to adjourn us at 7:41. Thank you all very much.